My name is Abigail. I was born in Dayton, Ohio. The town was small and life was simple. I went to school there and I knew many people. But even as a child, I felt different. I did not feel at home in Dayton. I wanted to see more. I wanted to see the world. When I was 13, my parents started to travel. My father got a job that sent him to other countries. My mother went with him and they took me to. That was the first time I left Ohio. That was the first time I saw another part of the world. Our first long trip was to Japan. I still remember the plane ride. It was very long, but I was full of excitement. When we arrived in Tokyo, everything looked new to me. The streets were busy, and the signs were bright. People moved fast, and I felt like I was in another life. We stayed in Japan for 6 months. I went to school there, and it was very different from my school in Dayton. The children wore uniforms. They were polite and quiet. The teachers were kind but very strict. At first, I was shy. I did not know the language. But little by little, I learned some words. I learned to say hello and thank you. I learned to eat with chopsticks. Food was also new for me. In Ohio, I ate burgers, pizza, and pasta. In Japan, I ate rice, fish, and noodles every day. At first, it was hard, but after some time, I began to like it. I even asked my mother to buy Japanese food when we came back home later. The people were also interesting. They were polite and quiet, but also warm when you spoke to them. I liked the way they respected each other. Even as a teenager, I saw that culture was not the same everywhere. That idea stayed in my mind. After Japan, we moved to Europe for a year. We lived in France first. I loved France because of the food, the bread, the cheese, and the small cakes were so good. My parents liked to go to cafes, and I went with them. We sat outside, drank hot drinks, and watched people walk by. The streets were full of small shops. The air smelled of coffee and fresh bread, but life in France was not easy. The people spoke French, and I did not. Some people did not want to speak English. I had to learn basic French too. Buy things in stores. I remember standing in line and trying to say the right words. Sometimes people laughed at me, but sometimes they smiled and helped. After some months, we moved again. This time we went to Germany. Life there was very different from France. The streets were clean, and the people were direct. They said what they thought even to a stranger. It was new for me. At first I did not like it, but later I saw that it was honest and I respected that. Germany also gave me another kind of food. Bread was darker and meat was very common. I tried many kinds of sausages, and I liked them. The houses were big and the towns looked safe. We lived near a park and I often walked there after school. Later we went to Italy. Italy was warm and full of colors. People spoke loud and laughed often. The food was simple, but very good. Pasta and pizza were not new for me, but in Italy they tasted better. I still remember one evening when my parents took me to a small restaurant. The man who owned the place gave me free ice cream. I never forgot his smile. Travel in Europe taught me many things. I learned that every country had its own life. People thought differently, dressed differently, and lived differently. I also learned that life could be hard when you do not speak the language. I had to watch, listen, and learn all the time. When I came back to Ohio after these travels, I felt strange. My friends were still the same. They went to the same school, met the same people, and ate the same food. They talked about sports and small events in town. I listened, but I felt far away. I had seen other places, and I could not forget them. I missed Japan. I missed the quiet streets and the small houses. I missed Europe too, the cafes in France, and the food in Italy. I even missed the strict but clear life in Germany. Dayton felt too small for me now. I wanted to see more. When I turned 16, I told my parents I wanted to travel. Again, they were surprised, but they were not against it. They knew I was curious. They knew I wanted more than Dayton. So they helped me plan my first small trip. I started with Mexico. It was close to the United States, and I could drive there. My parents were worried, but they let me go with a friend. We crossed the border and drove south. At first, the land looked dry and simple, but as we went deeper, we saw towns full of life. In Mexico, people were warm and open. They smiled and spoke to us even if we did not know much Spanish. The food was new for me. I ate tacos and fresh fruit. I drank sweet drinks with ice. We stayed in small hotels and sometimes in homes of people who offered to help us. I learned that travel was not always easy. The roads were not always good. The cars were old and sometimes we had to stop for hours. But I did not care. I was free and I was learning. I was meeting new people and seeing new places. After Mexico, we drove all the way down to Panama. Each country had its own face. In Guatemala, I saw old temples from the past. In Costa Rica, I saw the sea and the jungle. In Panama, I saw the canal and the big ships. Each place was different, and each place stayed in my memory. These trips taught me something. Travel was not only fun, travel was education. I learned how to speak with people I did not know. I learned to be patient when things were slow. I learned to be kind when I needed help. And I learned that the world was bigger than Ohio, bigger than the United States, and bigger than I could ever imagine. By the time I turned 18, I was not the same girl who was born in Dayton. I had seen many places, eaten many foods, and met many people. I was ready to travel even more. I knew that this was my life now. Travel was not just a dream. Travel was my way of living. Before I continue my story, please subscribe, share, and tell me where you are listening from. Your support means a lot to me. Now let's continue. After high school, I did not want to stay home. Many of my friends went to college in Ohio. Some stayed close to their families, but I felt different. I wanted to keep moving. I wanted to keep learning, so I decided to travel by myself. My parents were not happy yet. First, they wanted me to stay safe. They thought travel was dangerous. But they also knew me well. They knew I could not stay in one place, so they gave me some money and told me to be careful. I thanked them and promised to call when I could. My first solo trip was to Canada. It was close, and I could drive there from Ohio. I packed a small bag, got in my car, and drove north. Crossing the border felt exciting. I was alone, but I was free. Canada was clean and open. The roads were wide, and the towns were calm. I stayed in small hotels and met other travelers. They were from many places. Some were from Europe, some from Asia, and some from South America. We talked about our trips, and I learned new things from them. I drove through Toronto, Montreal, and Quebec City. Each city was different. Toronto was big and modern. Montreal had French signs and French voices in the street. Quebec City looked old with stone houses and narrow streets. It felt like Europe, but it was still close to home. That trip made me stronger. I learned to plan, to read maps, and to be patient when I got lost. I learned to fix small problems with my car. I also learned to trust myself. If I wanted something, I could find a way. After Canada, I wanted more. I wanted to see places far away, so I saved money and booked a flight to South America. My first stop was Brazil. Brazil was full of music and color. People were warm and full of life. They loved to dance and sing. Even if I did not know Portuguese, I could feel their joy. I visited Rio de Janeiro and saw the big statue on the hill. I went to the beach and saw the ocean shining in the sun. From Brazil, I took buses to other countries. I went to Argentina. There I ate steak and watched people dance tango in the street. I went to Chile, where the mountains touched the sky. I saw snow and felt the cold air on my face. In Peru, I visited Machu Picchu. The old stone stood strong on the hill. I felt small next to them, but also lucky. I was standing in history. Travel in South America was not always easy. The buses were slow. The roads were long. Sometimes I waited hours in stations. Sometimes I slept in cold places. But I never gave up. Each new country gave me new energy. Each border made me curious. When I came back to Ohio, I felt even less at home. Dayton looked small. The streets looked quiet. My friends talked about jobs, cars, and parties. I listened, but I did not feel part of it. My mind was full of images from Brazil, Argentina, and Peru. I wanted to go again. Soon I planned a trip to Asia. I wanted to see more than Japan. This time I chose Thailand. Thailand was hot and full of smells. The streets were busy with markets. People sold fruit, rice, and clothes. I ate food that was spicy and sweet at the same time. I saw golden temples and monks in orange clothes. The people were kind. Even when I got lost, someone always helped me. From Thailand, I went to Cambodia. There I saw Angkor Wat, the huge temple. I walked for hours looking at the old walls. I felt the weight of history. Again, it was quiet, but I could feel stories in the stones. After that, I went to Vietnam. The roads were full of motorbikes. The noise was loud, but the people smiled. I took a small boat in the river and saw houses on the water. I ate soup in small shops and sat on low chairs. The taste was simple but good. These trips in Asia taught me more than school ever did. I learned about faith, about old history, and about people who lived very different lives. I saw children play in poor towns, smiling with no toys. I saw old men sitting under trees, drinking tea and talking for hours. Life was slower, but also rich. Another way, I wrote letters to my parents during this time. I told them I was safe and happy. My mother still worried, but she was also proud. My father said, "You are learning more than I ever did." That made me smile. When I turned 21, I felt ready for bigger trips. I wanted to see more of the world. I wanted to visit Africa. My first stop in Africa was Morocco. The streets were full of colors. Markets had spices, carpets, and lamps. The air smelled of food and smoke. People spoke Arabic, but many also spoke French. I walked through old streets and felt like I was in another time. From Morocco, I went south. I visited Kenya. There I saw animals I had only seen in books: lions, elephants, and giraffes. Walked free. I took a jeep with other travelers and watched them in the wild. It felt unreal, like a dream. Later I went to South Africa. Cape Town was by the sea with big mountains behind it. I climbed one of the mountains and looked down at the city. The view was wide and beautiful. I felt small, but also strong. Africa showed me another side of the world. Life was not easy for many people there. Some lived in small houses with little money, but they still laughed and welcomed me. They gave me food and a place to sit. I saw that kindness was everywhere, even where life was hard. When I came back home again, I was different once more. I had stories from Asia, South America, and Africa. My mind was full of faces, places, and moments I could not stop. I knew now that my life was travel. I started to plan for Europe again, but this time I wanted to go alone without my parents. I wanted to test myself. I began in Spain. The streets were wide, and people loved to eat late at night. I tasted tapas, small plates of food, and drank juice while people talked loudly. Around me, I visited old churches and looked at the art. From Spain, I went to Portugal. The streets went up and down, and I saw the ocean every day. I listened to sad songs called Fido, and I felt the deep voice of the singer. Later, I went to the north. I visited Norway. The land was cold but beautiful. I saw long lakes and high mountains. I stayed in a small house near the water. The air was clean and the nights were quiet. Travel in Europe was easier than in Africa or Asia. The trains were fast and the cities were close to each other, but each country still had its own culture, its own food, and its own voice. I saw that no two places were the same. By this time, I had filled my life with journeys. I did not want to stop. I had seen many countries, but I wanted more. The world was big and I was still young. I had energy and I had dreams. I was ready for my next chapter. By the time I was 25, I had been to many places. I had walked in Asia, South America, Africa, and Europe. I had seen mountains, oceans, and deserts. I had tasted foods from every corner of the world. I had met people with different faces, different voices, and different lives. I was not the same person who once lived in Dayton. When I looked back, I saw how travel changed me. In Dayton, I was quiet and shy. I was afraid to speak to strangers. I did not like new things, but travel pushed me out of that life. I had to talk to people in markets. I had to ask for help when I was lost. I had to eat food I did not know. Each small step made me stronger. I also learned patience. Buses were late, roads were broken. Hotels were full and trains stopped for hours. I waited. I watched and I learned to stay calm. At first, I was angry when things did not go as planned, but later, I accepted it. Travel taught me that not everything can be controlled. Another thing I learned was respect. In each country, people had their own way of life. They prayed in temples, in churches, or in mosques. They ate with hands, with forks, or with chopsticks. They lived in small homes or big houses. Each way was different, but each way had value. I saw that there was no single right way to live. There were many ways. Travel also gave me joy. I remembered faces more than places. The woman in Mexico who gave me water on a hot day. The man in Italy who gave me ice cream for free. The family in Africa who invited me to sit with them even when they had little food. These small acts stayed with me. They showed me that kindness was everywhere. I also remembered moments with nature. The sound of the ocean in Brazil, the white snow on the mountains in Chile, the quiet lakes in Norway, the wide desert in Morocco. The world was not only cities and streets. The world was also land, water, sky, and air. I felt part of something bigger when I stood in those places. Back in Ohio, people often asked me why. I traveled so much, they asked why I did. Not buy a house or settle in one city. I always answered the same. A house could. Wait, travel could not. The world was wide and life was short. I wanted to see as much as I could. Some people did not understand. They thought I was running away. They thought I was afraid to grow roots. But I did not feel that way. For me, travel was not escape. It was education. It was discovery. It was life itself. When I met new people on the road, I also met parts of myself I learned I could live with. Little money, I learned I could sleep in a small room and still feel rich. I learned I could be alone and not feel lonely. Travel gave me freedom, but it also gave me strength. I never forgot the lessons from Japan. Be polite, be kind, be respectful of others. I never forgot the lessons from Europe. Culture is rich, art and food can bring joy. I never forgot the lessons from South America. Music, dance, and spirit can make life bright even when life is hard. I never forgot the lessons from Africa. People can smile, even with little. Kindness is not about wealth, it is about heart. Sometimes when I was tired, I thought about Dayton. I thought about my school, my street, and my friends. I still cared about them, but I knew I could not go back to the life I had. Before, I was not the same girl. I was a traveler now. The world was my home. At 30, I slowed down a little. I still traveled, but I stayed longer in each place. I wanted to feel more, not just see. I spent 3 months in Thailand. I learned to cook their food. I learned more words in their language. I made friends who still wrote to me. Later, in Spain, I stayed for half a year. I helped in a school to teach English. The children were full of energy. They asked me about America and I asked them about Spain. We shared stories and I learned as much from them as they learned from me. Travel was not always safe. I lost my bag once. I missed a train another time. I got sick in South America and had to stay in bed for a week, but I always recovered. Each problem was part of the story. Each mistake was part of the lesson. Now when I look back, I do not think of money or things. I think of faces. I think of voices. I think of places where I stood and felt alive. I do not have a big house. I do not have many things. But I have memories, and they are enough. Travel taught me one simple truth. The world is bigger than any one place. When you see more, you understand more. When you meet people who live differently, you learn to be open. When you walk in another land, you carry part of it with you. I am not done yet. I still have places I want to see. I want to visit India and see the Taj Mahal. I want to see Australia and watch the kangaroos jump. I want to go to Egypt and look at the pyramids. I still have time and I still have dreams, but even if I stopped today, I would be happy. I have lived a life full of travel. I have learned from the world. I have lived with open eyes. And when people ask me where I come from, I still say Dayton, Ohio. But in my heart, I know I come from many places. I am not only from one city, I am from the world. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it made you smile and dream. If you like stories in easy English, please subscribe, like, and share this video to help more people.